I know we made a good piece of television. Like, I know that. And I know it wasn't because of the budget. It was because of the story. It was because of the heart. It was because of the commitment to it. And so you don't need to make a movie for $60, $70 million for it to be good. I know that for a fact. And a lot of us come from that truth.
Thank you. Hey, welcome to Off Script with the Hollywood Reporter. I am your host, Yvonne Orji, here at the Georgian Hotel in Santa Monica, California. Today, we are serving up some hot takes with 6 A-list actors from some of this year's award-contending films. You're about to hear from Colman Domingo of Rustin, Robert Downey Jr. of Oppenheimer, Paul Giamatti of The Holdovers, Mark Ruffalo of Poor Things, Andrew Scott of All of Us Strangers, and Jeffrey Wright of American Fiction. They are on the record, but just a little off script with the Hollywood Reporter. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Yvonne. It is truly a pleasure to have with us these 6 actors who did such outstanding work in 2023 films. And I want to begin by establishing the fact that there are a lot of connections at this table, some of which the general public is well aware of, some of which even you guys yourselves may not know because these started early in your career. So I'm going to just mention a few movies, and if the people who were part of these...
I'm going to hear stuff I don't want to hear.
Purposely.
1998, 25 years ago, Mark Ruffalo and Paul Giamatti, you were both in Safe Men. Do we have any memories of that?
Nice stash, bro.
That's it. That's the best line from the movie. There you go.
Now, that same year, 25 years ago, Paul Giamatti and Andrew Scott, were both in Saving Private Ryan. How is that even possible?
Yeah, I was the guy in green.
I loved him.
Wasn't that
Fantastic. Nice work.
Oh, shit, I didn't
I
even
didn't know that either.
Because we worked together subsequently.
Yeah, I was going to say,
we never even
10
mentioned
years
Saving
after
Private
that, the same 2 gentlemen,
Yep.
John Adams.
Sure.
John
I was
Adams.
the guy in the powdered wig.
Now, Mark Ruffalo and Jeffrey Wright, almost 25 years ago, Ang Lee's Ride with the Devil. Any memories of that?
True story.
Yeah.
Yes.
I lied about being able to ride a horse.
I remember very vividly walking past you. You were tied to a fence post, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Beautiful beginnings.
That's I remember.
Now, Paul, you and Colman Domingo in 2013, All Is Bright.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Legendary All Is Bright.
that old.
That really, wow. Boy.
It's a Christmas movie. It's
Yes,
very
it
dark.
was.
Yeah.
Now, Paul and Jeffrey,
A dark Christmas movie.
both in Lady in the Water, 2006, and The Ides of March, 2011. So there may be some memories
You're
there.
in everything.
Yes,
you are
I
the
completely
glue.
got
You're the
around,
glue.
guys.
There we are.
Okay.
You're like the American Michael Caine. Can you speak to that?
Now, Robert and Mark here at the end of the table, it started with 2007's Zodiac, and then there was a whole bunch of movies, slow company called Marvel, I believe you guys worked together.
Were you in that?
Oh, wow.
Yes,
And-
after I convinced you.
That's true, though, right? You were lobbying for Mark to do it.
I wouldn't be here today without you, really, in so many ways.
And finally, I will note that this year, not only is Colman Domingo terrific in Rustin, but so is Jeffrey Wright.
Oh.
So there's 2 right up through the present.
It's our first time working together.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you're not only here because of your great work, but you're also here of your great work in the project he's doing.
There's
a bit of a crossover.
I'm just following Coleman.
Coleman's got 2 going there.
Now, we're going to get into these 2023 performances of each of you, but I want to first go back and ask each of you about sort of a pivotal turning point, a decision in your career that maybe laid the groundwork for the eventually having a year like you had in 2023. And Robert, maybe we can start with you. Your late father, who you made this wonderful documentary, Senior, both with and about, he was a pillar of the indie film community. You started out very much in the indie art house scene, but there was this moment when you're approached by Marvel about Iron Man. Because of your background in indie film, did you have any hesitation about taking them up on that?
So my dad raised me in this environment of to be growing up was to be making movies. And then doing this documentary about him, and then my missus who produced it with Chris Smith having the tenacity to tell me that I had to follow through with it and not try to do a puff piece at all because our history was so complicated. That was really a big turning point. And then shortly after that, Nolan called. So you never know what happens when you realize if you deal with the things in your life that are so small, but so important, it kind of opens gateways for the stuff that we think is important, you know? Or maybe perceived as important.
You've said, and I'm going to quote back to you, I was raised in a family that rebelled against the idea of a summer blockbuster having any merit. I'm happy that I regained my connection with a more purist approach to making movies, most recently with Oppenheimer. But before, I mean, just this idea of stepping into that world, was it jarring?
No, because anyone who knows Jon Favreau knows that he is, I mean, I remember seeing Swingers and just that monologue he has, and I was like, and he wrote this? I was like, who is this guy? Because there was no real surety that this was even going to take off, Iron Man was like a second-tier hero. They kind of let the lunatics run the asylum for a little while, and so it was a completely an indie approach to a genre movie to begin with. But I've seen that in all the films this year. There's this thing happening, I would say particularly this year, where I feel like many of us are afforded this opportunity to kind of like, there's a little subversion within the accessibility that I so appreciate.
Colman, let's go back if we can to, I believe, 2005. You're in New York, away from where your family was based, friends. I think you're bartending, struggling to find acting work, and you decide to sort of take matters into your own hands, right? What can you tell us about this one-man show that really sort of turned things around?
Man, I was a bartender at a bar in the West Village called 55 Bar. I would do whatever plays that I can do and then run across town and start my shift at 9 and go until 4 in the morning. And then when I wasn't working, I was writing. And I was trying to create something for myself because, just a frustrated artist. And between like when things would clear out about 1 o'clock in the morning, I was writing and I was putting on music and I was sort of writing about what was happening in my life. Both my parents were suffering from different illnesses and they lived in Virginia and I was just, still just trying to, figure things out. I lived in a terrible situation, illegal sublet and everything. So I was just, hustling.
New York story.
It's such a New York story.
Oh, yeah.
So I started writing, and I started writing what was going on and about the music I was putting on. I really still can't to this day remember if stories came first or the song came first, but I was putting this thing together that eventually, I'm one of those people like, if you give me a space, I will figure out something to do. So the owner said, hey, Colman, I want to do some theater, some projects on Sundays. You have anything? I'm like, yeah, let me try this stuff out. So I would do weird things like serve fried chicken and put on music, and it's weird. I would make it like sort of like a salon, and then I would read these pieces. And so I read them, and then friends of mine would say, I think, what is it? I'm like, is it a play? What are they like? I think it's a solo show. You're the event, and you have to follow this through. I started working with that, and I worked with the director, and it became a show called A Boy and His Soul. When it started out, it was about like how music was helping me to find different moments and anchor me in certain things, and part of sort of keeping your records, keeping your soul, your song music. Then eventually my parents passed away. They passed away while I was finishing this. They both passed 6 months apart. And the show was the thing that became the gift that kept on giving. I found my voice, I feel like, as a writer. And I started performed it at the Vineyard Theater in New York and in London and in Australia. And it really gave me more grounding of like who I was and what I could do. And so I really created this thing where I played my family members, myself, and all that. And it felt like it's something that I wanted to be in conversation with audiences. Like, how do we do it? How do we move through grief? How do we build when there's nothing? But it really, I don't know, then it was solidified as a playwright in New York, and people started to see me as the artist that I was. Because I've always been a character actor, so I would play 7 characters literally at one time. so that was fun and wonderful, and it really gave me some new footing for my career. And then it's the thing that I think is the greatest gift that I learned from that is to create something, not only for myself, but for others. So I felt like it gave me more agency in this industry.
And you worked at the 55 Bar?
Yeah.
We might have done some work together prior to Rustin, and I spent a lot of time at the 55 Bar.
I was bartending there. I was there for 4 years.
A lot of good
man.
music there.
A lot of great music
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
That's right.
Andrew, the math doesn't add up because I don't know how it's possible you're making movies 25 years ago. You look so youthful
You look
and
25.
great. And, yeah.
God, I'm glad I came.
But I think it hammers home the point. Like I think there's certain people who flipped on season 2 of Fleabag and it became this phenomenon, the hot priest, and they thought this is like a new guy. You've been doing this for a while, and I wonder when that moment happened where suddenly there's unprecedented levels of interest in you, how did you handle it personally and then also in terms of choices? Because you could have probably done more things than ever before in that moment. How did you decide what to do?
I don't know. I've always found like I started out really young. I was 17 or 18 when I was at the Abbey, the National Theatre in Dublin, and I don't know, whatever it was when I was very young. I remember being offered a part after I'd done maybe 2 plays, and I was only a little skit of a thing. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And I think I was still living at home. So maybe I felt like, I don't want to do that again. And quite early on, I suppose this word is courage, to go, I don't want to just play the same note if I don't have to, because it always seemed to me that what's of value to you is to be able to play as many different kind of notes as you could. And so all the time where I wasn't sort of more, what's the word, I suppose recognizable, I never felt like I was failing, really. I was always just so delighted to be working. And then I suppose when you get a bit more choice, I never really think that I'm kind of was winning, or, you know, it wasn't really that particularly different, except I do think there's a kind of thing that I think a lot of actors have, which is a sort of quiet thing where I love that thing that Meryl Streep says, and she's a great hero of mine, which is to sort of pack your own suitcase. You know, that even if you're not getting the opportunities, that you decide what you're going to put in your suitcase. And even if someone isn't asking you to go on holidays,
You got your little bag.
you've got it there, and you go. Yeah. And so when an opportunity comes up, you go, I recognize that I've packed for that slightly. And I think it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And I suppose then you just have a thing inside, and you just go, I don't want to do the same thing again. And it's a cliche, but I do think that's our biggest power, is to be able to say, no, I'm just not going to do that again for the wrong reasons. So it was beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, it's to try and keep it level, I suppose. Yeah.
Paul, long before American Splendor, Sideways, Cinderella Man, John Adams, Private Life, Billions, all the stuff that many people know and love you for, you're a guy recently out of the Yale School of Drama. You've done some Broadway, and then the film opportunities. You were making the most of them, but I don't imagine that at the beginning the dream was, if I may just remind, pig vomit in Private Parts or an orangutan in the Planet of the Apes.
Oh.
When, for you...
Oh, that was a dream.
That was a dream.
No, that was the strange fulfillment of a deep dream.
Seriously?
To be an orangutan, to be an ape in Planet of the Apes.
It was.
If that had been it for me, I would die happy.
Well, this is where I'm kind of going.
I couldn't believe I was going to be able to play a talking orangutan. And my agents were like, don't you want to be a human so they can see your face? And I was like, if you tell them I want to be a human, I'm going to burn the agency. Because I was like, who wants to be the human in Planet of the Apes? No, that was a huge fulfillment of a dream, dude.
And then what was the role that was, in your mind, kind of the thing that I'm sure maybe you had something like it in your mind when you're going through the training that I've just talked about?
I actually think, you say pig vomit and you laugh, but it's like, that was such a crazy, being fired out of the craziest cannon in the world. I couldn't believe I was being allowed off the chain like that. I'd just been in a drama school where it was like, it was very confining. Yeah. And it always felt terribly confining. I mean, look at me, man. I'm not like a Shakespeare guy and stuff like that. I tried, but I felt very confined a lot of the time. And I got out and I got this opportunity to do something that was absolutely bananas. And it was like there was no top on the thing. It spoiled me in a lot of ways. Because I thought, oh, this is what this is like? Doing a movie can actually be like? Because Betty Thomas, we rehearsed a lot. Yep. She was incredibly caring. It was like the camera guys were wonderful. Howard Stern was great. I mean, he was lovely. And it was like, and I got to do the dumbest accent in the world. And like, there was nothing, I could just go bananas. So I felt really freed coming out of something. And it felt theatrical too. She made a literal space so you could just get huger and huger and crazier and crazier. And it was just fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey, you start out really on most people's radar, probably with Angels in America, winning Tony for that on Broadway. You come out with Basquiat in your first film role. And within about 5 years, though, you have said that your attitude towards basically the business, if we can generalize, really had changed. And your priorities, the things that you were interested in doing as an actor, as a person, totally got upended. Can you just explain, because it does seem from the way you've talked about it that there was a before and after. What happened?
This is what I've learned, and we spoke about this a little earlier. This is the thing that I have come to value above all other things in this stuff that we do, and it's the collaboration. It's the people that I have the opportunity to do it with. I learned that because early on there were some collaborations that, might have been better.
Diplomacy throughout.
And it's, it comes with, with the territory in terms of the lessons that you're required to learn, and eventually you get through it. But yeah, there were some tricky, where I'd walk into a place and I go, yeah, ooh, this is not my beautiful house, this is not what I expected, when you talked about being in this environment that was supportive and that was creative and spontaneous. And I was like, I found myself a couple of times in some really what I thought were very cynical places. And I think the way that I kind of was able to articulate it at the time was that these were places rooms that aspired to be dumber than what was possible within the room. And I was like, oh, wow, man, this is kind of weird. Kind of pulled back, but also there are other priorities and other considerations that you make in terms of what you want to do. Like, oh, wow, there's a human being that was just born into my life, And
a lot of work in Africa.
There was a lot of work that that was a part of, let me, it kind of drew me in. I was trying to find something else that was, I had interests going back to, college in issues that were related to the work that we were doing. And so I kind of got drawn in but it felt very creative at the same time. In fact, the first time that I went to Africa, though, speaking of grounding, which is kind of related to what we're doing here, was when I went to the Venice Film Festival with Basquiat in '96. And I was like, oh man, okay, this is all this stuff. And here we go. So I said to the producer at the time, I said, okay, fly me to Senegal, fly me to Dakar, because I've never been to Africa, I've never been to Europe before. So fly me to Dakar, and I'll meet you in Venice in a week. So that place was always there. I kind of wanted to kind of invade Europe like a Moor or something like that. So there was always that, there was always that temptation, and I think maybe always a bit of the suspicion of, some of the trappings of what we do, It's a much simpler thing at its core, but it's surrounded by things that sometimes are not so simple.
Mark, it sounds like you had your own period of kind of questioning things around 08, 09, 2010, where, as you've put it, you pretty much had it with acting and shed a lot of the things that agents and representatives of all sorts. What was going on that made you step away, and then what made you, I think with The Kids Are All Right, come back?
In relation to what Jeffrey was talking about was, you have your dreams of it, and then those start to become realized, but they're not what you thought it was going to be. At some point, it gets away from you, and next thing you realize is it's all about the business and someone else's idea of your career that really didn't have much to do with what your idea was, and then you lose what your idea was of what your career was going to be. And I was already feeling that way, and then my brother passed away, and he passed away just before I was going to direct a film that I've been working on for a long time. And during the course of it, I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to acting. I kind of feel much more comfortable here in this place. you know, just the swath of creativity that opened up to you as a director. You're working with all the, you know, the department heads. You're working with music. You're working with movement. You're working with the camera. It was like a feast of creativity. I got a great part, the kind of part of a movie that I wanted to do, and I was like, this is going to be my last acting gig, and it was The Kids Are All Right. And I was just like, fuck it. I'm gonna do whatever I want here. There's no rules anymore. I don't have to be anybody for anybody else. And so I just kind of just did what I wanted with it. And it was really freeing feeling. And we went to Sundance, and I had the movie I directed premiered, and then 2 days later, The Kids Are All Right premiered. And I was sitting in that audience, and I was like, this experience, it's so honest. This movie's about something so important coming into the world at a moment, you know, about gay marriage, when all of these people were voting on gay marriage, and it was saying, you know, we're the same, and there's no difference between straight marriages and gay marriages, and it did it in a funny way that was just a human story that people could all relate to. And I heard it in the laughter. Like, the laughter tells you everything, you know? The laughter and the silence, right? And I heard everyone laughing, whether they were straight or gay or whatever the religion was, their background, everyone were all laughing at the same thing. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's why I came here. And then no one was like, hey, do you want to make another movie? You want a 5-picture movie deal as a director? Right. And so I was like, I found my way. Oh, there's a little glimmer of the path. Go there, young man, go there. And that was kind of, yeah.
Having talked a little bit about the foundations that may have somewhat shaped the decisions regarding these 2023 performances, let's get into those. And Jeffrey, you work very selectively, which is that's a great thing. And so I wonder, though, here's a guy, Cord Jefferson, who's a terrific TV writer, Succession, The Good Place, won an Emmy for Watchmen, who says he wants to make his feature directorial debut. How does a first-time filmmaker convince you to sign up to collaborate with him? In this case, to play a college professor who has been told that the reasons his books are not selling is because they are not, quote-unquote, black enough, and then decides to try to write one that is.
I believe the book that it's based on, Percival Everett's Erasure, talks with this idea about him, the narrator, hating stories that are about writers as he writes this story. Cord had taken that book and adapted it into the script that he gave me, and yes, it's a story about a writer. It's a story about someone who does all of those things you said, but it was like really just beautifully drawn. The architecture was like so sharp. You know, it was clear that Cord knew his way around a story. But what really drew me in wasn't like kind of that, like, for me, first level stuff. I mean, it's glittering, it's satirical, it's great. For me, it was the story of this man who's all of a sudden burdened with the responsibilities of family. I mean, you guys have talked about, you know, how these things affect. My mom passed not too long before I got that script. And so it was, the caretaking of the one who was once caretaker. That for me was what the story, how the story resonated. That's what like plucked me. I said, I know that story, I know that man, and I know the difficulties and the sacrifices that asks, not only like creatively, professionally, but also personally. And, you know, I can play that music, and maybe it'll be helpful to me, and maybe someone else. I don't know. But it's not all the it's not. It was just that, and also I think in some ways that is the most subversive aspect of the film, because it really is a portrait that I'd never been asked to play within before, a portrait of a goofy, mad, dysfunctional, at times functional, loving, frustrated, but together family that happens to be black. It's a family. That really is what the neon is pointing to. That's the meal for me. So, yeah, it was easy to say yes to that.
Nice. Paul, it's been 19 years since you and Alexander Payne made the terrific movie Sideways. I know there had been conversations about maybe doing other things over the intervening years, but here we are. He comes to you with The Holdovers, in which you're playing this boarding school teacher, cranky guy who is made further cranky by having to spend the holiday break with a grieving cafeteria worker and an aggrieved student. Was the fact that it was Alexander coming back and asking you to do this enough, or was there something particularly about this character where you said, I'm particularly gung-ho to do this?
Well, yeah. I mean, him coming back and saying, I want to work again was pretty good. I mean, I would have done pretty much anything for the guy. But he was showing me this script as it was coming along, and he said, I'm writing this thing for you. And I kept saying, he smells like fish, he's got sweaty palms, he's got a crazy eye. And all of that, I was saying, all of that's wonderful, and it was great. And, but he kept saying, and I've been thinking about it, he was writing this for me. It was an extraordinary thing to be able to work with a friend. And the story had a lot of resonances for me, but that I think he knows about because he knows me. And so it was something I was drawing in a deep well of my past, which almost made me feel like it wasn't work in some strange way. But I think the thing that I thought was really amazing about it was it's a Christmas story. It's genuinely a Christmas story. And because it's about selflessness, ultimately. These people all act selflessly towards each other so they can take a next step towards something. It doesn't get resolved because he doesn't make movies that resolve very easily. And it's like we don't know what's going to happen, but they get a little bit forward. But I thought this guy was very interesting. It was very familiar to me to see this person who constructed this incredibly elaborate persona. And he's got all of these ideals, and he's put together this whole kind of bullshit shtick, and to watch somebody start to drop their shtick. But what's great about his movies is the mask goes away, but it doesn't totally go away. And it's so fucking great, the line of what he walks. But to watch all of these people in this thing lose their shtick a little bit and connect. And we were talking, I was saying, it's like you watch people just shed their shit and start to connect. And I just thought, this is beautiful and beautifully done. So. And yes, I smell like fish and all that stuff. But it was like
that
was just to cover his booze breath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Mark, you with Poor Things are signing up to join director Yorgos Lanthimos, writer Tony McNamara, actress Emma Stone, who had all previously done The Favorite. Now they're getting back together, and they need a guy to come in and play Duncan Wedderburn, a narcissistic ladies' man who has an accent, an attitude. He's just such a colorful character. And I wonder for you, when the opportunity arose, is it on one level intimidating to be joining that group of folks who are?
Yeah.
Is it? And then also, I mean, what a fun character, though.
Yeah. I was like, Yorgos, I don't think I'm the right person for this.
Did you really?
Yeah. I tried to talk him out of it, and he just laughed at me. Yeah, it was just nothing that I'd ever. I mean, a lot of us did come from theater, right? So, and you're in theater, no one ever is like, oh, you can't go from romantic comedy to tragedian, it just doesn't. But like in the movie business, you feel like you're a little bit in a box sometimes. But I'd never played anything like that either, and I was scared. I mean, I saw his movies and I was in awe of them, so I was really scared. And he just laughed at me, and so I was like, okay. It was such a great turn, and I get to do so much fun stuff in it and break all the perceptions of me or what people want from me. Or, you start to do something and people, you like all of a sudden springs up a brand or whatever.
Persona.
Yeah. And I got to bash that.
Robert, I guess it's not a totally different situation with Oppenheimer where you are as Louis Strauss, but it's been a few years since you've played this type of a character. And I want to read you something that Christopher Nolan has said and then ask you to react if you would.
Sure. Can you say it in accent, please?
Not
Just
good enough
won't
actor.
All right,
but
I'll try to make it register anyway.
here we go. Quote, he's one of our great actors, and though a generation of kids know what a great movie star he is, they've not seen his subtlety and brilliance. I wanted to get him to do something completely different, to lose himself in another human being. When was the last time we've seen that? Chaplin? Directors are very aware of how talented Downey is, but because of his incredible energy that can punch through the screen, finding the right thing for him is difficult, close quote. Do you think that's, what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I didn't write that. Jeffrey said it. It's all so small. Like there's all these trappings. Oh, what's this? And here's the genre, and here's the character, and here's what happens in the story. And you go, no, I made my decision based on this thing that nobody would ever know if I didn't tell them. And that's almost always it. I think, you know, he called. A call from Nolan is a thing. He asked me to come over and read the script on red paper with black type, which was like doing Sudoku while drowning. And but I read it and it was written in first person. I was like, this is masterful. And I just thought the meditation for me was on that horrible thing that I'm just going to venture a guess and say we all tend to do, which is comparison. Comparing my insides to someone else's outsides. How they're perceived, they're special, they're this and that, and particularly in the context of that time period. Hot War, Cold War, you know, this is why this affected the way my parents' counterculture was. So anyway, to me, it was a logical thing from senior going back into what is this thing that my dad's generation rebelled against, and it was like 100 people making a watch together every day, and you know, it's fun to realize what you're becoming accustomed to. Like it's okay. So let's talk about my perks. There are none. Okay, well, hold on a second. You can have $300 a day to spend it however you like. I was like, that's my dry cleaning budget. So, first of all, I think, you know, maximum humility is where we get that spot, whether we can choose to do it or the situation requires. It's like, you should be scared. You should have approach anxiety to this, because this is real shit, if you do it right. Like I've seen this year, you know. I love that you were saying it was a meditation on grief and caretaking. That's what I saw. And dude, what you were able to do with this thing of the horror wish fulfillment of being able to actually go back and talk to that which bore you in this fable you did in this history where you constructed this character so just masterfully. I mean, dude, a guy who wants to be freed but doesn't even know that he's trapped. And by giving and giving and giving, it's his salvation. It's like, fuck. So it's always small.
Colman, you did 2020 film Ma Rainey's Black Bottom for George C. Wolfe, a guy who Jeffrey knows quite well as well, works with him all the time.
I know him fairly well.
Yeah. George C. Wolfe is looking to cast the part of Bayard Rustin, who is unfairly kind of not remembered as much as he should be. This is a black gay civil rights leader who was the principal organizer of the 1963 March on Washington. So he comes to you. You had won an Emmy for Euphoria. You'd been Tony nominated for acting in The Scottsboro Boys and producing Fat Ham. You'd been in important movies like Lincoln and Selma, but you had never been offered the chance to be at the top of a call sheet of a film prior to this. So what did it mean to you when that opportunity came from George?
I had to learn deeply the principle of being in service, and just in service to the story. And that's what any journeyman has learned, that it's not about the size of the role, but it's about how do I help serve a function. In the theater, we all know who the equity deputy is. It's usually me.
Thank you.
Where's my cut?
Colman will do it. I appreciate it. Let's get it in. And that's exactly it. That's the thing I've always been the equity deputy. I've always been the one that had to look out for the other actors or throw the parties or bring people together. So it's a skill set that I've had deeply. So when Rustin came along, I knew that I had to tap into that part of service. That part of service of making sure that I looked after the whole. And I also took a leadership role. And you know, that role took everything. I was able to give, honestly, there's those roles that we I don't know if we wish for, but we hope for, that we were able to give everything. And I know that I've given everything in the in the 32 years that I've been in this industry, from regional theaters to off-Broadway to writing to directing, you name it, it's in this film. It called on everything that I had. And more than anything, it called on my spirit that truly believes in service and trying to make sure that people feel heard and seen and that we're doing it in a heartful, mindful way. Because that's what the character by Rustin did. He gave his life. His life was about being in service to others. And then history put him in the shadows. And I thought it was my opportunity to really bring him out fully and construct a complex character that's loving and interesting and intelligent and messy and wild, but spirited, because I know that this film can have an impact. I know who I am in a room and what I can do and what I can give. And at the highest level, I know that I'm a teacher and I'm in service to work as an artist. So it was truly my privilege to just give everything I could.
Andrew, All of Us Strangers, it's about a gay man living in present-day London who visits his childhood home and finds living there the parents who he lost 30 years earlier, very suddenly. You were basically being asked by Andrew Haigh, the filmmaker, to play a version of himself. And I wonder if you can talk about both the idea that the person who you're playing is on the other side of the camera, and also the sort of the challenges of that in particular, where you're literally shooting in his childhood home.
I suppose I didn't really think of it like I was playing Andrew. I felt like that we weirdly kind of co-parented the character, considering that that's a sort of theme in the film. But I certainly looked to him. He's like a comrade, in the telling of the story. And I suppose the challenge actually for me was to not pretend to be anybody else, but to, find out, go back to a place where I was. And so it was sort of like a marriage between our two personalities. And it was difficult because I think I have a good imagination. But I think, I'm pleased about that because I do think that's I think it's the most important thing you can have as an actor, that and a sense of humor. I really think that they're the two things that, well, certainly for me, that you keep going back to. But there was a duality because there's two sections to the film, and one of them is about going back to childish feelings, and the other one is about very adult, almost physical, falling in love. Yeah. And so how do you sort of do that without making being boyish, kind of gross, or I don't know, like gilding the lily somewhat? But because he was so generous in filming it in his family little suburban home with one camera, it's such a vulnerable thing to do. And I could tell that all the brutality that comes within families, accidental or not, really was raw for him, and I think he sees that in me. And we were very sensitive with each other, and I could tell if I was affecting him, that really mattered to him, because he's not a sentimental person, but it's sort of shamelessly about the tenderness of families and the tenderness of love, and feels very vulnerable. So because of the strike, we didn't get to ever see it with an audience, and we went to see it the first time the other night with like 350 people, and I really did feel like, oh God, I felt like I was sitting there in the theater with no clothes on, and I was as well.
I just want to piggyback on, because there's so many times in this where it's that thing we're afraid of and you want to calibrate, where you have to lose it. You have to have these huge expulsions of emotion, and you want them to be varied. Otherwise, it just feels like you're hitting note number 2.
Right.
So I want to know, the trust for that, the intimacy, all that, like that, the risk factor. I mean, I heard that you trusted the guy, but I just want to say, how did you navigate all that?
Honestly, I suppose I never thought that I would be able to be in a film to play that kind of character. At least when I was growing up, I was so obsessed with films and acting in films, just watching great acting, and I suppose to be able to play a character, it's just like what you just said there about I can play that music. That's exactly the way I felt. I felt like I can play those notes. So I suppose the attempt, it's like we were saying earlier, I feel like, is how do you not act? How do you not do that? And I don't think you can really do that without some sort of support within the script. I just don't think, or the other actors. And then I suppose you just let go and you use your imagination, don't we? I don't know. But it's a weird thing, isn't it? Sometimes with certain certain projects, they just have magic, some of them. And you can work on things and you can feel real hope and huge love for them, and they just don't. And then some of them just, you know, you just the light, and it just ignites. It's a strange thing, isn't it?
Well, one of the really beautiful scenes in this movie, All of Us Strangers, is when your character gets to come out to his parents, who he was never able to do that to in real time. And I do want to bring up something that I think is fairly noteworthy, which is, and sadly still somewhat of a rarity even in 2023, but both Andrew, you and Colman, you are openly gay actors playing openly gay characters who are at the center of important films. To actors who may not yet be in a place where they feel they can be open about their sexuality, worry that it could hinder their prospects in this business, do you believe that things have gotten better over the course of your decades in this business?
From the very beginning, I've always been exactly who I was. There was never a coming out story. But also I thought that I always wanted to lead in rooms with my intelligence and kindness and what I do. And it wasn't really something that was actually on the table. You know, in the beginning, you're challenged because you think you look around and you feel kind of rare, like other people are sort of like hiding that aspect. And I thought, well, why? I remember somebody asked me this years ago, and I thought it was the weirdest question. After I worked with a very well-known director who's straight, and some interviewer said, "So how does so-and-so feel about you being gay?" It was the weirdest question. I thought, he's my brother. He's like my brother. What are you talking? But also I was like, what world do you live in? You know what I mean? So I just thought, like, what does that matter? And I still feel that way. I feel like, you know, being gay is just like one aspect of me, but it's not everything. And I feel like I've never put limitations on what I do. It's like I've had, you know, I played pimps. I've played in The Color Purple. I played Mister. And it's like, but I also, and maybe that's the thing I've always believed. If I don't put limitations on myself, this industry won't put limitations on me. But if I'm walking around with the secret and hiding stuff, but I think you see that. I need to be my fullest self to access everything. You feel that way?
I'm going to make a pitch for getting rid of the expression openly gay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hear me out.
Here we go. I'm with you.
It's an expression that we actually only ever hear in the media. You are never at a party and you say, "This is my openly gay friend family." Has that ever happened?
Never.
You never say it.
Not once.
Why do we put openly in front of that adjective? You know, we don't say you're openly Irish. You don't say you're openly left-handed. But whatever.
We don't even say hi.
Because
this is
it's
my
two
straight
steps
family.
away from
Right,
shamelessly.
exactly.
There's something that's in it that's a little near shamelessly. You're open about it, you know what I'm saying? And I nearly prefer shamelessly. I nearly prefer that.
This is shamelessly.
And sometimes I just feel like if you got to say it to understand it, just say, you know, just say out possibly, or you know what? Sometimes just don't say anything at all.
No, just say, listen.
And I get it,
Colman?
but I think there's something about it that is you're openly gay. And now I think it's just time to sort of park it. I mean, and I think that's the strange thing, exactly as you're saying. Representation is a wonderful thing, but you know, we're talking an awful lot here about transformation, representation and transformation. And look, I wouldn't be here if representation hadn't improved. But I do think transformation is very important for actors. We love it. We love it when our mother is reading us a story and she turns into a wolf. And you go, because it speaks to our empathy, it speaks to our, and I think it frightens us sometimes to be able to sort of go, okay, well, I can't, because I don't have the same biographical story as something else that I can't think that, because that's what connects us. And I think there's a danger of us all actually just being separated a little bit more, because I think it's a dangerous idea to put a clamp on transformation, because that's not shouldn't be the priority. The priority should be clamping down on the prejudice within our industry and looking at who gets to transform, not the transformation itself.
Wow.
Yeah, so just that's my. I don't want to offend anybody, but openly gay, but bye. See you later.
Yeah, I'm openly straight.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. Shamelessly.
I'm almost shamelessly straight too now. I'm getting to the point where I can almost be shamelessly straight.
Heterosexual by default.
So another thing that may be shifting in our business, I guess, is the mid-range budget movie, which some of these fall into but are becoming increasingly endangered. There's, you know, the movies that I think were part of establishing many of the people at this table. I don't know if they would be made today, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and also the repercussions of that. Is the fact that that project today may well be made on TV something that makes you more interested in doing TV, or just Mark, take us away, because I can I saw you nodding a little bit, and I think like I don't know, would You Can Count on Me,
Yeah.
Kids Are All Right, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
Are these
Those
would they
are
be
the-
made today?
You know, I do think the one of the good things that came out of the strike was these interim indie, this kind of preferential treatment towards interim indie projects. I went out and did one. It was 10 episodes of independent television for $5 million.
Wow.
And that was about so that's, 6 hours of television. That was less than what we made You Can Count on Me for, or around the same. And it was doable. I mean, it was a grind, and I haven't done that in a long time, but it was doable. And they were able to give the actors everything that Screen Actors Guild had asked for. The production company agreed to do it. It wasn't like breaking the bank, wasn't impossible. And I do feel like what happened with streaming was we all ran to do it because it was another kind of freedom, and it was an economic freedom, and it was directors and writers had another kind of freedom that they didn't in the studio world, right? And so we all ran to do it, but what happened was it just created a vacuum in the indie world. And now I feel like there's a chance to have this resurgence of that, and there's I hope more of a thoughtfulness about the possibility of that. Now I'll look at an indie picture much different than I did 2 or 3 years ago.
How so?
Like, I know we made a good piece of television. Like, I know that. And I know it wasn't because of the budget. It was because of the story. It was because of the heart. It was because of the commitment to it. And so you don't need to make a movie for $60, $70 million for it to be good. You don't need that. I know that for a fact. And a lot of us come from that truth. And so I hope that, I didn't mind I didn't mind working SAG low budget. I mean, I can afford it, but I didn't mind it.
Mm-hmm. Let me add this too. I think the model has to change. And just recently, like me and my partners, we produced a film called Sing Sing that premiered at TIFF. And we kept the budget very low. And when I tell you, we kept it very low, but we made sure it was equitable for everyone.
That's right.
Every single person had a point.
That's what we did.
Above the line, below the line.
Yep.
We sold it to A24, and we're selling it internationally. And it's like, everyone feels a part of this.
Yeah.
So we keep it low, but it makes it equitable for everyone. So everyone rises when we win. And everyone gives full heart and have some ownership
If
of
it does good, they
we
do
all
good.
do
Yeah,
good.
Okay, why not?
It's a simple model, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Very
Why-
simple.
It's fair,
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
simple, you know exactly what it is.
Exactly. Everything's transparent.
Yes,
Everyone
You know the
wins.
problem with that, though?
What?
It's too much like doing the right thing.
Right.
Too much doing the right thing.
That's why it's not industry standard. I mean, it's just shared equity.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can make a living,
it
but you can't make a killing.
but more make a living. Yeah.
Let's close with something that hopefully will be a little fun. The worst audition that you ever went on.
I went in for a Dr. Pepper commercial. They came out in the hallway and they said, okay, you're the Pied Piper and everybody wants to be like you. And I just stood up and walked out. So I didn't have a chance to be bad.
There you go. Who else?
Right decision.
Paul, did you ever have something go
I
wrong?
auditioned for one musical once. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Yeah.
And I just was like, every time you came to you're supposed to burst into song, I just started laughing. I couldn't do it. And I walked out of the room. I was like, I just thought, I can't do a musical, but I'll go in on it anyway. I just couldn't do it. It was really embarrassing.
I've got a story. I don't know if it translates so well. It may sound fairly entitled or something like this, but maybe not. So there was this role. I'm not going to be specific. There was this role based on this book that was really interesting, subject that was really interesting. It was being directed by this super well-regarded, somewhat of a legend director. You might be able to figure this out. I don't know. Anyway, so I'd auditioned a couple of times. Okay, we're going to do a read-through out in L.A. I'm in New York. Great. Okay, cool. Oh, this is good. We fly on this director's plane, his private plane. Where he's got a, he's a part of a syndicate, or owning the plane. He was a.
Wow.
But we fly out to the.
What was the
LA.
tail number?
We do. I'll tell you why I don't know. I'll tell you why I don't. We get out. We do the reading. We're all gathered around the thing. We do the reading. Oh, okay. I'm going. I don't know how that went. Okay, I go back to my hotel room. I get a phone call. Yeah. So, Jeffrey, that was interesting. I don't think you're going back on the plane. We're gonna fly you back separately.
No.
I was like, oh,
You had to fly
okay.
commercial.
Wow, I had to fly commercial. I have to fly first class. That was. But that
That's
was
funny.
that was a kick in the in the things.
Okay,
Ended
next-
up working with that director
Did you?
later, like on something a few years later. But
Okay,
wasn't
next
fun.
one. Best piece of advice you've gotten from a fellow actor, or at least let's say most memorable piece of advice you've gotten from a fellow actor.
The best piece of advice I got from a fellow actor, it was a pilot, and it was with James Ferrantino, and I had a little bit of a monologue, and I didn't know it really well. And he just turned to me and he's like, "Learn your fucking line."
Yeah. That's it.
And I should have known better.
I did Long Day's Journey into Night in the theatre, and Donald Moffat played what's he called, the father, and it's all about the frugality of drinking. It's all about the whiskey bottle, and the father he's obsessed with how much people have somebody drunk his whiskey. And I was doing this scene, doing blah blah blah, and he turned around to me and he said, "I don't believe the way you pour." And it was such a good note, because I was pouring the fucking whiskey in, like as if, whereas these people would have been. And I remember I was about 20 years old at the time, and I was like, "What? I couldn't even understand that detail was." But of course, that's stuff that you have to think about. That's not about what you're saying, but about how you're behaving. So, so then I poured it. It was a good one.
Which living actor who you've not worked with before would you most like to work with, Colman?
Immediately, I thought Emma Stone.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately, I thought that she's so. I'm sure I can feel it. I can feel
right.
that she's inventive and kind and generous and quirky and weird, and you feel like she's going to just give you a gift every day, and you're like, well, how am I going to
Absolutely.
respond? Yeah.
Yep. Good call.
Okay.
She's a precious artist. Yeah.
I wish I could have worked with Robert Duvall. I mean, you've worked with him, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I wish I could have. I mean, he's very old now, so I don't know that I will.
Yeah.
But I wish I could have.
Sure.
I'll say this, Dustin Hoffman. Simply because when I started off doing this stuff, it was like that. He was like the guy that I, from Papillon to, to Midnight Cowboy, to these transformative roles, in which he just refashioned it anew every time. That's what made it. That's what I thought it was. This stuff that this acting stuff. I'd love to do that.
If you could change lives for a day with someone at this table, just to see what it's like to be them, who would it be and why?
Really?
Colman saying Paul?
I do. I think you're such a fascinating person.
I was going to say I want to be the guy who's willing to be the deputy deputy. I'm serious. I'm not kidding. I was like, I want to be you because I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who's like, yes, fuck it, I'll do that. You know what I mean? So the guy was like, no, seriously. I'm serious. I was like, you, because I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy who's
Robert?
willing to do that. No.
It would be fun to be Mr. Wright and just be in a psyche where I'm always capable of tying someone up like a pretzel with a thought if I need to put them in check.
Oh boy.
Sorry.
I think you know those moves. Mr. Downey.
I projected them on you then. So it would just be like,
It would just be being
I'd be
yourself.
like, oh my God, that's the same place.
Would you mind swapping?
Let's do it. Openly swapping? Openly swapping.
Let's make
a deal. Does anybody want to ratify this?
Come on. We have you all in.
Okay, last two. if you had not become an actor, what would you be doing today?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I wanted to be an animator, but I don't know. Yeah, that's
to
what I
play hard
wanted
if you
to.
could, right?
Yeah, I know. That's what I wanted to do. But talk about something that's even harder than this, and is even more crazy. But I did want to be an animator. Whether I would have been, I don't know. But that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, I tried, but it didn't work out.
I got into Johnson & Wales to be a chef, actually. So cool. That's what I wanted to be. I really thought, I think I'm a really good cook. I feel like I'm a good cook, and I'm a good host. But also,
I want to be you.
And
I want to be this guy.
But it's funny, I'm thinking like that third act of my life, I feel like I want to investigate architecture. I'm just an architecture nerd, and I'm always thinking, maybe I'll go back to school and learn that and do that when I'm like 70, I don't know.
Yeah.
I started taking art classes, sculpture classes at the Art Students League in New York City.
Recently?
Yeah, and I love that. And it gives me a lot of what I get from this. And if that was a possibility, that would be a good second act, Nice. Or teaching. Nice. I'd love to teach, maybe.
Robert?
If I wasn't an actor, I would be doing hard time.
I want to know what crimes he would have committed, though.
A trumped up felony, possession again, but this time it was on a Hummer. These cops set up, but still, jury, whatever. Judge got pissed off, bench warrant. Oh, fuck, it was the same guy from the other stuff, so it was a cumulative.
Andrew?
It's really weird. There's a theme. My mother was an art teacher, and when I got my first film when I was 17, on exactly the same day, it was a little Irish film. On exactly the same day, I won this bursary to educate myself as a painter for like 5 years, a big bursary, and I chose fucking show business. So I'd go into art again.
Thank you for that. I'm glad
But you
did.
would do that?
I would definitely do that because it's so frustrating now. I don't know if do you.
I don't, painting, yeah. It's really.
It's really hard because if you don't exercise those muscles,
Yeah,
you
it
lose
goes
them, and it's so
fast.
frustrating.
Yeah, it goes really
but that's what I
fast.
would do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I started acting my junior year of college. I was a political science major. I grew up in D.C. What else are you going to do? My mom was a lawyer for the government. So that was the idea. And probably if I weren't doing this, I'd be a lawyer. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a criminal lawyer. I'd be Robert. I'd be your lawyer. I'd be defending. Pro bono.
Putting him away.
You can make a career.
It's a growth industry.
Well, guys, on behalf of the Hollywood Reporter, thank you so much for bringing it.
All right, so I feel like we learned a lot from today's roundtable. First order of business, please keep Robert Downey Jr. employed as an actor because the alternative, not so great. Until next time, I'm Yvonne Orji and I am openly single. And this has been Off Script with the Hollywood Reporter. Oh, thank you. Have you been here the whole time?